Have you ever heard the words speed and velocity and thought they meant the same thing? They are very similar, but in physics they are not exactly the same. So in this lesson, we are going to understand speed first, then we will use that idea to understand velocity clearly. So what is speed? Speed simply means how fast an object moves. For example, when a car is moving on the road, we can describe how fast it is going using speed. At this point, we are not worried about whether the car is moving left, right, north, or south. We only want to know one thing. How fast is it moving? Now let's look at the formula for speed. The formula is speed equals distance divided by time. This means speed depends on two things. First, the distance the object travels. Second, the time it takes to travel that distance. For example, if a car travels a long distance in a short time, the car has a high speed. But if it travels a short distance in a long time, the speed is low. Here is the key idea about speed. When a speedometer shows 60 kilometers per hour, it means the car can cover 60 kilometers in 1 hour if it keeps moving at that same rate. But notice something important. The speedometer only tells us how fast the car is moving. It does not tell us the direction. It does not say whether the car is moving east, west, north, or south. That is why speed has magnitude only. In simple words, speed tells us how fast, but not where to. Now that we understand speed, let's move to velocity. Velocity is very close to speed, but there is one important difference. Speed tells us how fast an object is moving. Velocity tells us how fast the object is moving and the direction it is moving in. So if a car is moving at 60 kilometers per hour, that is speed. But if we say the car is moving at 60 kilometers per hour east, that becomes velocity. So always remember, velocity does not just ask how fast, it also asks which way. Now let's look at the formula for velocity. The formula is velocity equals displacement divided by time. Notice that we are using displacement, not distance. Distance is the total path traveled, but displacement is the straight line change from the starting point to the ending point. Here, the object starts at point A and ends at point, and the straight arrow shows the displacement. So velocity tells us how quickly an object changes its position in a particular direction. That means velocity depends on two things: the displacement of the object and the time taken. Velocity is a vector quantity. This means velocity has two parts, magnitude and direction. Magnitude simply means the size or value, like 20 meters per second. Direction tells us where the object is moving, like east, west, or north. Look at the arrows on the screen. The green arrow shows velocity toward the east. The blue arrow shows velocity toward the west. The purple arrow shows velocity toward the north. Even if two objects move with the same speed, their velocities can be different if they move in different directions. So, 20 meters per second east is not the same as 20 meters per second west. That is why direction is very important when describing velocity. Now let's compare speed and velocity side by side. Speed only tells us how fast an object is moving. For example, if the speedometer shows 80 kilometers per hour, we know the car is moving fast, but we do not know the direction. That is why speed has no direction. Velocity gives us more information. It tells us how fast the object is moving and the direction it is moving in. For example, 60 kilometers per hour east is velocity. The 60 kilometers per hour tells us how fast the car is moving. The word east tells us the direction. So the main difference is this: speed tells us how fast. Velocity tells us how fast and which way. Now let's focus on the main difference between speed and velocity. Speed is a scalar quantity. This means speed has magnitude only. Magnitude simply means the size or value of something. For example, if we say a car is moving at 60 kilometers per hour, that value 60 kilometers per hour is the magnitude. But speed does not tell us the direction. It only tells us how fast the object is moving. Velocity, on the other hand, is a vector quantity. This means velocity has both magnitude and direction. So if we say a car is moving at 60 kilometers per hour east, that is velocity. The 60 kilometers per hour tells us the magnitude, and east tells us the direction. So remember this clearly. Speed is scalar because it has magnitude only. Velocity is vector because it has magnitude and direction. Now look at these two cars. Both cars are moving at the same speed, 60 kilometers per hour. So if we are only talking about speed, they are the same. But now look at their directions. The red car is moving toward the west. The blue car is moving toward the east. Because they are moving in different directions, their velocities are not the same. This is why two objects can have the same speed, but different velocities. So in this example, the cars have the same speed, but they have different velocity because their directions are opposite. That is the big idea. Let's quickly remember the difference between speed and velocity. Speed has no direction. It only tells us how fast an object is moving. The formula for speed is speed equals distance divided by time. Speed is a scalar quantity because it has magnitude only. For example, 60 kilometers per hour is speed. Velocity has direction. It tells us how fast an object is moving and the direction it is moving in. The formula for velocity is velocity equals displacement divided by time. Velocity is a vector quantity because it has both magnitude and direction. For example, 60 kilometers per hour east is velocity, so the simplest way to remember it is the speed tells us how fast. Velocity tells us how fast and in what direction, and that is the difference between speed and velocity.